Welcome back, adventurers. To celebrate hitting a big milestone for our channel and some, I'm answering some of your questions, and who knows, maybe I'll make this a more common thing. So let's just jump right in. My name is the Lore Keeper. Ask me anything. Creature2923 asks, what time periods would you like to see more fantasy world stories, etc. take inspiration from? Now, honestly, I've always been really fascinated with sci-fi, and I recently just watched the Dune movies, and I can't get over the amount of world building that was done there. It's just fascinating to me, and it's just very inspirational to me to look at the amount of lore and history and attention to detail that people can put into little cultures and the little things that make a world feel real. So for me, I think a lot more sci-fi, and sci-fi is probably something I'll lean into a lot more in the future. But as far as like stories and fantasy worlds that I think we could take more inspiration from, I've always really been fascinated with Japanese culture, especially the clan/tribalistic feel that was going on in the feudal era. So I think just building a world where things are much more village focused and leader focused, where there's sort of one person that stands out as like the person that you turn to in dark times. I think that's always been really fascinating to me. And if we're talking about specific stories that I like to take inspiration from, for me, I love Lord of the Rings. It's my favorite film, I guess. And I've always just really liked how the magic and the monsters and the creatures and the spirits and all that sort of stuff is there, but it's not overtaking the story, that the world building is just, it's very soft world building, and that you can still have the magic and still have those moments of awe and just sheer power that some of these characters can embody without taking away from the aspects of the story that makes it human that we can relate to. RS_Knight asks, what's your favorite fantasy trope? Now, I know I've made a bunch of videos about getting away from cliches and fantasy tropes and that sort of thing, but I've always really liked the idea of elves being sort of connected to nature and connected to the world in a guardian sense, that they are the guardians of things that grow and that sort of thing. So for me, even in my own world, even though elves don't exist, plot twist for you guys if you've been following my story, elves don't exist anymore, they're extinct. But back when they were a thing, I always really liked the idea of them being sort of the original caretakers of Maladea. And so for me, that's probably my favorite fantasy trope, because it just takes what we know as humans, and you know, being humans, we like to destroy nature because that's what we do. We're a violent species, and I think that elves sort of embody the thing that we wish we could be and the protectors that we know we should be, and I think that's what makes them so fascinating to us and why they continue to be prevalent in so many different fantasy stories. When are you going to make the third arc part of the D&D campaign video? The first two have been so helpful to flesh out my campaign. Well, Shepherd Tamer, this is probably an old comment, but you know what? It's already done, so go check it out. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I made a series of 3 videos on how to plot out Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 of your D&D campaign. And if you haven't checked them out, they took a lot of time to make, so please go check them out and leave some love. Ghostly Grimace asks, what's your favorite example of a villain becoming an ally in fiction, and what are your tips for setting that kind of thing up in a tabletop setting for games like D&D? I mean, my brain immediately goes to 2 things. One, it goes to Darth Vader, but that one's kind of become a little bit more of cliche because it's sort of that like typical redemption arc for me. But the other place that my brain goes is Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I think that that is the true essence of a villain, right? When you think about it in a storytelling sense, in reality, most people don't just do evil things because they're evil. There's always a reason. There's always something that makes them do the things that they do, that informs their actions and compels them to do the things that they may or may not know are wrong, or that they see as right in their own eyes. And for Zuko, his honor was always that driving factor. And I think that his redemption arc is really beautiful because it comes from a realization of finding out the truth that the Fire Nation isn't perfect and that it isn't the driving force of the entire world like he thinks it should be, and that ultimately the peace that he's looking for and the peace of mind that he's looking for comes from himself and not from the affection and respect of his father. And that whole arc that he goes through as far as confronting that fear and confronting that pain and then doing his part to help better the world, even if it means him not being in control, is what makes it so absolutely beautiful to me. So my brain just goes to that. I think Zuko is a great example for a villain that has become an ally. Now, as far as tips for setting that kind of thing up in a tabletop setting, just make sure that your villains have a reason for doing the things that they do. Another villain that comes to mind is Thanos, who is somebody who, I guess in a lot of ways, knew he was doing something evil because he knew that he was killing billions of people, but was doing it for what he felt was the right thing, and he felt like he was making the hard decision that nobody else wanted to make. And so again, as far as setting that kind of thing up for your tabletop games, I think that the best thing you can do is create a villain that has a goal, and with that goal has created a plan or a series of steps that they know they need to do, And the big thing here is that that plan is in direct conflict with your players. And then towards the end of it, maybe that villain can go through some sort of role-playing experience or something with your party, or another bigger, badder villain shows up, kind of like how Crowley was the evil person in Supernatural, and then towards the end of Supernatural, Crowley was like an unwilling ally. But by having them come to terms with their own actions, or by having them come to a realization through role-playing or something like that, and have them shift their ideas or something like that, where now they need the party, or the party needs them, or they have come to a point where they understand each other, or something like that. That is how you can take somebody that was evil at the beginning, it could be the most evil, like Darth Vader, and change them into something that is now an ally, or at least a loose ally. Red Shadow 2797 asks, what got you into D&D in the first place, and why did you decide to make a YouTube channel about it? Bonus question, what is your favorite class and subclass in D&D? Well, what got me into D&D in the first place was that I played it way back when I was 12 years old. I was a little flame, and I played it at 12 years old and just fell in love. And I remember I was a brownie rogue. I think it was a brownie. I don't remember exactly the class, but I remember it just being the most simple class because I was brand new to it. I didn't even know what all the rules were. Nobody really explained it to me. They just handed me the dice and said, just roll and go along with it. And I just fell in love, and honestly, I think it was the dice. I have always had this little fixation with collecting miniature things, and for me, dice was just one of those things where I saw them, and I was like, they're so cool, there's so many different sizes and shapes. And I just sort of fell in love with it then, but I never played it again for years. What actually got me into it was the sheer amount of time that I had during the pandemic, and I decided I wanted to make a YouTube channel about something that I was very passionate about, which, of course, D&D is something that I was passionate about because I fell in love with it when I was playing it pre-pandemic. And with all of this time that I had, I just decided I wanted to make a channel about something that I was passionate about, and D&D happened to embody sort of all of those things that I was passionate about, which was movies and storytelling and role-playing and acting and all of these things that I've always had a passion for that I just never found an outlet for. And I decided to make a YouTube channel about it, and I remember telling myself that if I ever got a video to 1,000 views, that I would be very proud of myself. And here we are, 20,000 something, actually almost 30,000 subscribers later, and almost 3 years later. So thank you, everybody. Bonus question, I guess, what is my favorite class and subclass in D&D? My favorite class is hands down, without a doubt, a wizard. And it's not even because of the power. I love the idea of just writing spells down in a book. I love the idea that I can loot a body and find a spell book and see if there's any spells that I'm missing and add that to my own book. It's almost like a trading card thing. I think there's a fixation there, again, with like trading and with collecting things, and the wizard really just embodies that sort of like go out and find whatever you can to make yourself better. And as far as my favorite subclass, I gotta go with the Blade Singer. The Blade Singer is just pretty awesome. I love that they can embody that wizard thing, but also become the most badass fighter with the highest AC if you do it right. So that's it for me. What do you eat to keep the fire head going? This is a joke. Also kind of based off that movie Element, because of fire, people eat sticks and coal and stuff. Well, actually, it's funny that you ask, because this flame it's actually the eternal flame, and it was this thing that I should probably just tell that story another time. We'll get back to that. Darius Come in Store 1997 asks, what's your opinion on giving PCs lair actions when they are fighting in their own castles or properties? I mean, my opinion is that that's amazing and would make for a dope fight, but I think that it might be a little game breaking, so I guess it really depends on you as a DM. If you don't mind that their castle is being attacked, and that realistically, if you give them lair actions, this castle is probably going to wipe the floor with anything that's attacking their castle, or giving them special properties or anything like that, I think that's amazing. I think that makes for a compelling reason for a group of players to actually get a castle in the first place. But there are also mechanical ways that you can tweak that to make it more fair, right? Like the properties could be things like just giving them a +1 because of this aura that the castle gives off. Or if they have lair actions, maybe it's a list of very specific ones that they can choose from that are already sort of balanced because you have gone through and sort of done the math or that sort of thing. It's a matter of tweaking the math and the probability of the dice in their favor, maybe just a little bit, but you can also balance it out by having some very powerful things attacking the castle. It's very different if what's attacking the castle is some guards, like the local guards, or if it's like shadow monsters from the astral realm that have come out of nowhere and are attacking the castle, because you can beef those things up, you can homebrew them a little bit and balance that out to make those lair actions necessary in order to defeat these things. So that's my opinion. I think if you as a DM are down for that, that's an amazing thing to give to your players, and I think players, and me as a player, would be very excited to jump into a session like that. D Bryant 965 asks, in what ways have players truly surprised you in a game? So looking back, a few things that come to mind was when a party of underleveled players actually defeated a Narzagon. If you don't know what a Narzagon is, they're pretty beefy. They have a lot of HP. They're able to sort of heal themselves multiple times. They ride flaming shadow horses, nightmares. These players were not a high enough level. I actually thought this was going to be the Narzagon sweeping the floor with them. What ended up happening was the druid, of course it's the druid, that summoned a call lightning and was just absolutely obliterating this thing over and over each turn, while the rest of the players sort of huddled around them and were just blasting it from afar and kept pushing it back, and they actually ended up killing it. It was a pretty exciting session. Beyond that, I had a player who had multiple personalities, and in the middle of the game, I'm talking like, Act 1 going into Act 2, they fought one of the earlier bosses, and this earlier boss happened to be somebody that was related to their backstory. And they asked me if it would be okay for them to sort of give their life fighting this thing. And the problem was that this specific character, in order to kill this boss that they were fighting, had to sort of go around the other players because the other players didn't want to kill him. And so what ended up happening was that the players were trying to stop them while they were trying to kill the boss. And it turned into this whole slugfest where everybody was trying to fight each other. And ultimately, that character ended up dying by killing the boss and would then come back later as an NPC to be the bad guy. So just this player asking me if that was okay for their player to sort of go against the rest of the party, which, by the way, if you're ever going to do that, ask your party first. You really, really need to make sure that your party is going to be okay with that, and that dropping that sort of bomb on them is something that they're looking for in a game. Luckily for me, my players are very malleable to that sort of thing and actually found it to be fascinating, and it ended up becoming a reoccurring joke that the next character that they played was also going to turn on them. So that was very exciting as well. I think hands down the biggest surprise was when one of my players, during the BBEG boss fight, the last session of the entire campaign, this player decided that they were going to jump into a portal. They were sealing away this elder god for the rest of time behind a very powerful spell, and I told them many times, hey, these incredibly powerful artifacts that you've spent many sessions looking for are the only things that are going to allow you to defeat this thing. They're all part of this sort of ritual, and once you start the ritual and this spell takes place, anybody caught inside of that portal is going to get sealed away forever. So you need to make sure that you're out of this portal because you're not going to be able to get back out. And one of the players actually asked for all of those powerful magical items. It's like asking for the Elder Wand or the Deathly Hallows. And all the players gave them up willingly because they didn't know what was about to happen. And this player looked at the party, said, I'm so glad that you were here with me at the end, and jumped into the portal and just sacrificed themselves to make sure that these things were never used again. And I thought that was the biggest jaw-dropping moment for me because I 100% did not expect my player to do that, especially that specific character. They were very selfish and greedy for most of the game, and this was just their first moment of selflessness, and ended up becoming a very emotional moment for everybody at the table. Lids Slimimim Hiowas 4519. First of all, you for that name. Asks, what's been your favorite video to make so far? I think my favorite video to make so far was probably my Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 series, because they were the ones where I really just sort of went off of my own script instead of hiring somebody to do it or going off of what I thought would be a good video or whatever. I just said, you know what, I'm going to make a video that I know I can talk about because it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I love writing. I've written novels, and I mean, if you guys are following along with The Forgiven, go check it out, selfless plug. You know that I do enjoy writing, and screenwriting has always been a thing for me too, so there's projects coming along for that as well, to drop little hints there. But I think that those videos were the ones that I was able to speak the most about in a way that was passionate for me. And I put a lot of love and care into those videos to make sure that they were good and informative for DMs that wanted to make games like the ones that I wanted to make. And I mean, go figure, it turned out to be the videos that did probably the best besides one other video. And here we are now. So yeah, I think it's a good lesson to learn that making videos that you care about and that you're passionate about really are the ones that go far. Data Glitch asks, what does your workflow look like when creating videos? Wow. So, I mean, I could get really nerdy here and into the YouTube data stuff, but to just kind of keep it short and sweet, my workflow is I create a script and I choose very specifically which scripts I want to create. And after I've created the script, I then record the audio. I send it over to one of my editors. And if they're not available, then I edit it myself. And what we're doing is just cutting down all of the ums and uhs and all of that stuff, which I'm sure you'll find way too many of those in this video. And we cut down the audio so that it's the most concise, specific version of the video that it could possibly be. And once that's done, then I take all of the various different poses and artwork and stuff like that that I have created for Tobias and for the Lore Keeper and all of that stuff, and I start to sort of create a series follows along with the audio editing and pacing it so that it matches the audio. And then once all of those are laid out, then I go in and throw in the B-roll, like clips from videos, from movies, things like that. And then once that's done, then I'll go back, I'll throw in some text, I'll try to throw in a couple jokes here and there, and I'll split the video in a place that I think is good and insert any of our sponsors if we have one for that video. But overall, the process, the workflow is hours and hours of editing. Any video, even a 5-minute video can take up to 2 to 4 hours to create. So it's definitely a labor of love. And I highly recommend that if you have a passion or anything like that, jump into YouTube. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll wish that you had in the first place. Jacob Bob asks, I'm not a DM, but I've been in campaigns where it ends up falling apart because we aren't following the direction the DM planned. Once, it took us 3 months to get through what was supposed to be the prologue of his campaign. What can we as players do to help keep things on track, moving in the right direction? This is a wonderful question. And I think that the biggest thing that you want to do is make sure that you find a DM that fits your playstyle. Just because they're the DM doesn't mean that you need to bend completely to them. The biggest thing that you can do, and the reason that my current group has lasted all of the years that it has, is because I put up a very specific request for players on Reddit, and the ones that responded, hundreds of people responded, and I vetted them very carefully. I asked them very specific questions, letting them know that this is the type of campaign that I'm looking for. This is the tone and the pacing that I think we're going to have. These are the characters that I'd like to have. These are the races and things that I don't want to have in the game. And really, it just sort of filtered out to the people that felt like they fit the most for my game. Now, I did have to drop a player because they ended up not being the right fit. It is really a game of guesswork, but ultimately the best thing that you can do is to make sure that your playstyle fits the DM's playstyle, and if it doesn't, hopefully you can communicate with each other and get to a place where you can understand each other and what you're looking for at the table. When you say that it took 3 months to get through, it was supposed to be the prologue, it sounds like this DM just didn't understand the pacing, and you may not be the only person at the table that felt the game was slogging along. And then you also have to think that maybe you were the only person at the table that felt like the game was slogging along, and that just means that you weren't a right fit for that table. Now, as far as things that you can do as players to help keep things on track and moving in the right direction, communicating with your DM. If you feel like the game isn't moving fast enough, then just tell your DM, like, hey, I was hoping for something a little more fast-paced. I'm not the only person that thinks so. I talked to the other players. We think you're doing a great job, but we don't want to be rolling for random encounters when we're traveling from one city to another. We think it slows down the game. And if that's something that you can cut out and just get from one city to the other in a quick narration or in one encounter or whatever the compromise is, then that's something that the DM can do. And hopefully you have a DM that's cool enough with taking some critiquing. And then there's other little things that you can do to help keep things on track, right? Like knowing your character, having your spells ready, knowing what you're going to do for the next session, rolling the damage and the dice together. Little things that just take up a lot of time, especially in the middle of combat, because combat can be very slow when it comes to like the time scale of D&D. So just helping the DM with all of those little things, like knowing your character sheet and being ready to take your action, your bonus action, your movement, all of that beforehand instead of waiting for your turn to do that. All of those things, you would be very surprised how quickly they can move a session along and move combat along. And then also a big one, if your DM is dropping hints or clues that you should be moving in this direction instead of this direction or whatever, because that's where the quest is, but you decide to go shopping, those little things is fully within your purview as players to be able to do, because that's part of the fun, right, is being able to do whatever you want. But they do slow down the game. And so you have to think that there's a lot of little things that also happen that can be slowing down the game that may not be on the DM and may be on your chaos as players. This is why it's super important as a DM and as players to communicate with each other, check in once every few sessions just to see, is everybody having fun? Do we think it's going too slow? Do we think it's going too fast? What can I do more of? What can I do less of? Can you guys do this instead? Can you guys make sure you're ready at the end of the previous player's turn so that you know what you're going to do? Little communications like that, which are just things that you should get good at as a skill in life, will really help to move the game in the right direction. Fun StormKids803 asks, how do you make a plan for a D&D campaign and stick to it without railroading your players? Love the videos, especially the How to Plan Each Act series. Well, the biggest thing that you can do without railroading your players is to create an outline, just like I did for those Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 series. But the biggest thing is to remember that those outlines are not set in stone. Just think about it. If you had an entire campaign planned out and one of the biggest plot points is that this character is a cleric and their god is going to be the big thing that saves everybody at the end of the game, and it's going to be amazing, and then halfway through the game, 30 sessions, 50 sessions in, that player decides, I don't want to be a cleric anymore, I actually want to go a paladin route, and they decide they want to change their class or they want to multi-class. Now your entire plan has completely shifted and it doesn't work. So the big thing is that you need to remember that the outline is an outline for you as a DM to look forward to for every session, but should be changing when major events happen, when players do things that weren't part of the plan. Those things then inform the outline for the future. The outline should not be something that is a end-all be-all for you. Those plot points, those moving pieces in the campaign, those moving pieces in the outline are all dictated by your players. So just remember that you can have a story, you can have a plan for a campaign, but your players are informing those decisions at every step of the way. And you as a DM are not telling a story. You are helping narrate a story that is being told at the table with everybody. And that's the biggest thing that you need to remember. And I think there was a lot of confusion with that series of videos with people telling me that I was railroading and stuff like that. No, the outline is there as a guide for you as a DM. You need to be willing to change those things with your players in order to make sure that everybody's having fun at the table. Otherwise, you're just narrating a story and you might as well just go write a book. As a fellow victim of world builder's disease, how do you cope? Now, if I understand correctly, this world builder's disease is the clinical diagnosis of creating so much of a world that you never get around to actually playing in it or writing it. Well, oh man, I have been there, and really the only way that you can get around that is to just start writing or start playing. I don't know if you're referencing specifically a D&D game or a ttrpg game, or if you're talking about a screenplay or writing for a book or whatever, but the only thing that you can do is to just start. Once you start, you'll actually find that your decisions for the things that you did to build your world will actually get better. They'll be more informed because as you write, as you build with your players or whatever, each of those role-playing experiences, each of those dialogue pieces that you put in will actually start to inform characters, will start to inform the world that you've created in ways that you didn't think were possible, and will actually start to mesh those puzzle pieces together better simply through action. So my piece of advice is to just start. Action is the best thing to get the ball rolling, because otherwise you'll always just have a series of notes and never an actual piece of finished work. So get out of your head, get out of your way, set an alarm on your phone to write for 15 minutes a day, and you'll be surprised that after 15 minutes you'll actually want to keep going, because the biggest way to find motivation is just pure discipline. And finally, Jordo Sleet asks, have you ever had a problem player? Oh boy. And if so, how did you deal with them? Yes, I have had a problem player. I've had multiple problem players, but luckily and unluckily, I guess, those games sort of fell apart and became something of the past before I really ever had to have a conversation. And I've also been in a game where there were other problem players and the game fell apart. So I think if there is a problem player and there's a lack of communication, you're just asking for the game to fall apart. But as a DM, I have had one problem player that I actually had to communicate with multiple times. And I mean, the best thing that you can do to deal with them is communicate with them. Check in with the rest of the party, because maybe you're the only one that's feeling like that, because at the end of the day, you're a bunch of different individuals at a table, and not all personality types mesh well. And that doesn't mean you can't play together. You just have to be able to communicate well. And so checking with your players, making sure that they feel the same way you're feeling. And if there really is a problem with this specific player, talk to them. And if it's easier for you to type it out and send them a message instead, just say, hey, I wanted to get this out all in some bullets. Here's how we're feeling. This is what you're doing. This is how it's affecting us. We love having you. I just want to make sure that we can all stay on track. That sort of communication really is how you get around to that. And unfortunately, I think communicating is a skill that a lot of people don't have anymore, because we're so used to being behind a screen. So just being able to talk to somebody and come from a place of love and understanding that, like, we're all friends here, we're all here to play a game, but your play style is affecting the table. so this is how I think we should steer it, and give them solutions. Like, instead of doing this, let's do this. I understand you want to do this, but how about we try this instead, or we meet in the middle ground somewhere? Just having that back and forth is going to go a long way, but ultimately, for me specifically, this problem player had main character syndrome and made everything about them. Was also consistently late, consistently canceling games, and would get upset if we didn't cancel the game. But this particular player really wanted everything to be about them and just completely tuned out if there wasn't any role-playing going on with them involved. So just overall was just very rude, and ultimately, after communicating with them multiple times, I just removed them from the game because it wasn't conducive for the rest of the party. So long story short, or TLDR of that is, communicate, and if the communicating fails, then they're just not a right fit for you, and that's okay. So there you have it, guys. That is my Ask Me Anything. If there's any questions that you want me to answer in a future video, just leave them in the comments down below. I would love to sit down and talk like this more. I actually think this was a lot of fun to just get some of my thought out. As always, thank you so much for watching. Forge on, my friends, and we'll see you in the next video.